Right, so that's that. And now let's see if we can get this bit working.
Excuse me.
Right.
This is meeting now, streaming live on
Oh,
Facebook.
does it? Yeah.
It says on that little corner, well, it's on your screen actually, just above the Wolf Bane. It's in the corner. It says it's now streaming live.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Says so on that screen, but it's not showing up on the
Right.
on the Facebook yet. Let me just check.
There was a delay last time when we tested it, Did you
Yeah, I
remember?
know. Yeah,
It took
yeah,
3-4 minutes were actually kicked in.
yeah. Right. I'm gonna.
And it's 18:59 now. So
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It appears to be on. Yeah. Yes, we're on, Joe. So that's a relief. So
you weren't. Yeah.
yeah, no. It apparently there's 8 people watching it already.
Okay.
And hello, good evening, or good morning to those of you in America. And I see that our first person to notice that we're live is Rebecca, who runs one of your fan pages in America. I think
I heard
Rebecca,
about that. Yes.
I think Rebecca would probably be asking you questions about Grimalkin. So we'll
Okay.
see if she's got anything she wants, because she can be first, can't she?
You can be first, yeah.
You know, Rebecca, if you want to pop your question in the chat, we'll relay it on to Joe and welcome in to you and everyone else. Joe, in about 5 minutes' time, has got a little bit of treat for us all. You're going to give us a bit of an exclusive in about 5 minutes, Joe, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm going to read the first couple of pages of Wolf 3, which is the new book, which is not even got a publisher yet. Well, it's being looked at the moment by my editor, but by Penguin Children. So we'll see. They've not said yes yet.
Well, well, I think we're all confident that they will, because I mean,
Okay.
you know, it's not like you've come out of the blue. You've been writing them for a
Yeah.
while now. In
Yeah.
fact, we were just talking today, just last week, because you're not fully able to do physical visits to schools and libraries. We've been doing quite a few by Zoom, haven't we?
We've done
And
quite a few.
we did. You're very popular with schools in what you call the county, but what everyone else calls Lancashire. And a primary school in Garstang had a Zoom with yourself about a week ago, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And turns out the head teacher is someone that you taught when you were still an English teacher.
Yeah. Did he? I think he said it was 1989 when I taught
Yeah.
it. I taught her A-level English. Yeah.
Yeah.
Back in
So
1989. Yeah.
isn't that such a strange small
Yeah.
world that, you know, someone you taught English is now the head teacher of a school, teaching the children all about your books and writing and reading?
Yeah. It's strange. Yeah. I know.
And I think we had quite a popular response. I mean, it just shows what a bit of local connection does. Because, I mean, there were 2 boxes of orders plus 3 full sets to children that I delivered today. And there's still a few more orders coming in, aren't there? You know, so, you know, it was quite a good response, really. So I don't know if Rebecca's going to ask us a question.
Let's hope it's
Ah,
working.
yeah. Oh, hello. We've got someone called Rose from New Zealand watching us, and we've got a chap you actually know who is a really good illustrator. Sean Steele is
Well, I've
watching
met Sean
us.
before. I know Sean. Yes.
You know Sean really well. I
I
think
do. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
he did some pen and ink illustrations for
He did.
a little
Yeah.
project many years
Yeah.
ago, didn't he?
Yeah.
And there's Emily Critchley says hello. And you've
Hi.
actually
Hi,
got
Emily.
someone from Preston, George Watson. Hello, George.
Hi,
If,
George.
so great that you're all joining us, but please feel free to drop some questions into the chat box, and we'll relay them on to Joe. In a minute or two, we'll just give it a minute or two so we know that we've got a few more people in. There's nothing worse than signing on a minute or two late to miss the treat of something new. Joseph's very kindly agreed to read us the first couple of pages of his newest book, which, if all goes according to plan, would be out May or June next year. Joe, is that right?
Well, to be quite honest, I think because of COVID and everything, I think it's unlikely to be published in May. That it normally would have been published by the end of May. So I don't know what's going to go on there. I would guess, hopefully it'll be next year, but it's more likely to be later in the year. We'll think October, maybe something. We don't know. I'll find out this week or next week.
They've moved you around. Plus, for a while, you wrote 2 books a year. So
I did, yeah.
You just have to. Yeah, the thing with publishers is you have to just fit into their schedule, don't you? Really. Yeah. Apparently, Rose is saying it's really chilly down in New Zealand. In fact, Linda, your agent, is New Zealand based as well.
She is, yeah.
Was she not saying it was about -1 the other day?
I don't know that, but it's not what we're getting anyway.
No, well, I mean, we were sat in your garden getting all these books for Garstang Primary signed, and looking up, it looked like thunder and lightning could have been coming our way.
It was mild, it was warm. Yeah, that's the difference.
Yeah, but just before you do the reading, Rebecca runs one of your fan pages over in America. Rebecca, do put some questions of your own into the chat, but she very kindly has sent me a couple that people in her Facebook group have asked. I think we'd best get this one out of the way, and
okay.
then we can settle down. So Emmanuel Hernandez says, John Gregory was furious when Alice called him Old Gregory. How would you react if someone called you Old Mr. Delaney?
Well, on one hand, I'd have to think, well, I am old. That's fair enough. It would depend whether they were smiling or not at the time, maybe. But I think what you got to accept is that Alice, on the whole, doesn't do it to Gregory's face. I think she has some respect for him, but Old Gregory's just Alice's cheeky way, really. And it's the phrase she uses maybe to Tom in private. So she wouldn't normally do that to his face.
No, she is quite cutting at times, isn't she? She's not frightened of speaking her mind, Alice.
That's
in fact,
true.
I was made up when you were writing the original series, which in some ways seems quite a while ago now. When Alice got her own book, it just felt like you'd finally reached a point with the series where she suddenly was as important as Tom. That she was just as important. Did you always have that in mind? Was she always going to be a big...
No. I mean, I meant it to be important. After she'd appeared in the first book and the second book, I thought, well, something could have happened to take her out of the narrative, but I did intend to keep her going, really. But I never, at that stage, thought she might end up with a book all to herself, where she'd tell the story and it'd be her voice. No, I never thought that. That sort of evolved slowly.
Right, now we're getting questions in now, so we'll do a couple of these and then we'll do our special event for the evening. So Rebecca says she actually wants to ask you about Thorn, and she says, what is Thorn's relationship with Tilda, and are there any more sisters or rivals?
No, Thorn is not related in any way to Tilda. I don't want to go too much into Tilda because of the new book and everything, but Tilda is in book 1, book 2, and will be in book 3. She's in book 3 because I've written it already. Thorn is really, you could say, it's almost like Grimalkin's apprentice, and she's one of the witches, really, who wanted to be a killer assassin, basically. That's what it is. But there is no sort of family link at all. No, that's true. No link.
And Sean asks, he wonders about water witches. Are they inspired by the folklore of Jenny Greenteeth and Peg Powler?
Yes, to a certain extent, yeah. I mean, I don't know about Peg Howler. I'm not sure if I know. I've heard that one, but certainly Jenny Greenteeth, yes. But if you want to know the truth, the moment of inspiration when I decided I would use water witches, there's a pub in Lancaster called the Water Witch. It's on the canal, and I used to go there when we went to Lancaster, and I can remember sitting there in the sun, staring at the water of the canal, and thinking, imagine a witch underneath there, a water witch, and that's seriously where it came from. And then he started to think, what are the legends? What are the stories about witches that dwell in water? So I know of Jenny Greenteeth, and that came into it a little bit as well too. Yeah, but yeah, it's true. It's from the pub. It's from the pub. That's what put the idea into my head.
I mean, it's tricky because the real history is all around you and where you write about. But in a way, you want to create a unique world that the witches and everything is just in your domain. So you tend to steer clear of the reality in a way, don't you?
I do, yeah. And again, if I draw upon legends or folk tales, they are the starting point, but they don't necessarily get written as the popular version is. You say I've tried very much to make them my own, really. So
Yeah. And we've got a greetings from Berlin from Nicholas, which is brilliant.
right.
And Emily asks, when did you first realise you wanted to be a writer?
That's a long, long time ago. So the truth is, I didn't want to be a writer when I was a child. I think, and I played in a band. I really, played music. Well, not very well, but I played in a band as an older teenager, and into was about 21. And I wanted to be a rock star, but failed. My wife said the dream dies now as soon as I got married. That was the end of my rock star career. Not that it ever would have got anywhere anyway. And then as it started to actually, then I went to uni quite late. I was an apprentice. I was a fitter. I worked in a factory, did A-levels at night school, went to university, thought what job could I do? It looked like it was going to be a teacher, but the idea sort of blossomed inside my head that I wanted to be a writer. But I never did much about it. That's the truth. A lot of people dream and they don't do much about it. And I was one of those people who didn't do much about it. I would write a bit, get bored, and then if I sent my first book off, I must have been 20 odd, and it got sort of rejected, and that rejection knocked me back so much that it write for 2 years. So becoming a writer was very slow. I mean, it's like for most people as well. You've got lots of distractions. You're at university. You're a bit older than most of the students, but you're still got to do the work and come up with the coursework and everything. So that was demanding. And then you become a teacher, and then you got to prepare work and everything, and more books, and that distracts you as well. And then you got a family. All these things get in the way of writing. So, and for me, it was to actually get up early in the morning and write before I went to work. That's what you've got. If you want to be a writer, you've got to make time. And that's how I really got going in the end. About 1990, 91, I took it seriously. And then I'm writing a book a year. And they're all getting rejected, but I am writing a book a year. I'm working at it. I am seriously trying to write. So though I'm born in 1945, it takes me till 1990, 1991, till I really start to make my dream come true, if I can. So that's how long it took.
Also, am I right in thinking that a couple of the things you wrote back then, you're now going back to and weeding a few bits out and bringing them into current
I
writing?
think, yes. I mean, some of the book. I mean, Slither's a very good example. I mean, when I did get an agent and I started to write a book a year, I wrote a book called Slither. And Slither was aimed at adults, really, but it got rejected. So at some point, I think, well, we can recycle that, we can rework that, and Slither becomes part of a children's book, really. And again with more than one book. I think maybe 3 books of the Spooks first series were based upon something I'd tried and not got published before for adults. So yeah, I don't think I wasted anything.
Right, we've got 2 more hellos and 1 more question, then we'll let you do the
Okay.
reading, Joe. So James from Australia. So we've got
Yeah.
someone way down in Australia,
Hi,
James
James.
O'Brien.
Yeah.
Good morning to James. And Christiana is watching in, listening in from Romania. You've been to Romania, haven't you?
Yeah, I did a book tour 2008. I did three days in Romania. It was a really good tour. I enjoyed that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know, Christiana, you might have to speak to your local bookshops in Romania and see if they can invite Joseph over in a year or so. He, still likes to tour, don't you?
Oh yeah, he was
Yeah.
good. I enjoyed
And
Romania.
just before we go to the reading, Christiana actually says, this is a good question, actually. Who's your favourite villain in the Wardstone Chronicles, in the Spooks books? Have you got a favourite villain?
I don't know. I think sometimes I don't know. I think people mean by a villain, because sometimes the villains are half good and half bad, really. I mean, in theory, when you watch the first books and you see book 4, you would think that Grimalkin is an ultimate villain. Well, I won't spoil it for people who've not read it, that she chases after Tom, and she is going to do him a serious mischief if she can. That's what Grimalkin's position is in the Spook's battle. But of course, Grimalkin changes, and Grimalkin becomes an ally. But I think she's the most formidable of the villains, if you want to call them villains.
Yeah, I mean, when I read Spook's Battle, that's when your tours started getting big, wasn't it? In fact, we had
Yeah,
T-shirts for that tour. You know, I still got mine
we did.
upstairs. You
The
know,
Spook's battle, I still got mine
we,
somewhere.
we, we had some black ones and some white ones. Yeah, that was when you're big when your publishers give you a T-shirt to wear when you're on tour. But you know that I mean, we did a 2-week tour for Spook's Battle, didn't we? That was when
Yeah,
I
we did.
used to
Yeah,
pick you up at 7 in the morning from
yeah.
a railway station before you moved a
Or
bit nearer.
Ormskirk. We met at
Yeah,
Ormskirk, yeah.
yeah,
And Tom comes across, Tom's the boot, and he has a cup. He has a flask of coffee. That was
yeah.
our treat before we
Yeah,
started
that
the
was it.
tour.
That was your perk, wasn't it? A
It
cup of
was, wow,
coffee.
we got coffee.
Well, I think you still insist on a cup of black coffee when you do a visit to a school or a library.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
So everyone,
well, you can plan if you don't.
yeah, sit yourselves down nice and quiet. This is a huge treat for an author to share something basically a year ahead of publication is an absolute treat. So a huge thank you from me and for everyone who's watching, Joe, for being willing to share a little insight into what happens next. So anything you want to say, and please feel free to, start when you're ready.
Okay, right. Well, first of all, there it is. It's paper. It's not published. The book has gone off to my usual editor, to my usual publisher, and they are considering it. There's no guarantee that they will publish it. They could reject it. Another thing I have to say, I'm going to read the first 2 pages. Sometimes in the past, the first 2 pages have ceased to exist. It's not impossible. You understand what I mean? I'm saying to you, these pages may not be in the final book, but there's a good chance they will. The working title is Wulf 3, and the working title is The Last Spook. That's what it's called so far. But again, that may not be the title. And there are 2 narrators. I said I won't do that again, but I have done. And the first narrator is Alice. Alice is telling the story for the first third of the book. Then something significant happens. I'm not going to spoil it for you by telling you what. And then Wulf takes over. And Wulf takes over 1/3 of the way through the book. And he tells this story right through until the end of the book. So this is Alice Dean talking. This is Alice. And the first chapter so far is called The Pompous Bishop. Okay, here we go. The pompous bishop soon began to annoy me. Now, the truth is, it ain't hard to do that now. The patience is all but gone, blown into tatters by time and sorrow. A long life I've had, and not all of it's been good. I was born into the Pendle clans, and my mother was a witch called Boney Lizzie. Being raised by witches ain't the best start in life, but my name is Alice Dean. I just had to make the best of it, and I certainly did that. Once, I was the most powerful witch in the county, but those days are long gone. I was sitting near the door, right at the back of the chapel. My head was bowed low and my face was shadowed by my hood. There were a few people scattered around me, most of them kneeling and praying, 1 or 2 even older than I was. The bishop was seated in a high chair with his back to the altar, and the arrogant look on his face showed that he was full of self-importance. I watched him settle into his chair, wriggling on the straight-backed wooden seat. He looked as comfortable as a frog sizzling in a greasy frying pan, but it wasn't the heat he'd be feeling. It was late autumn, and the chapel was plagued with cold draughts. No doubt they were blowing up his cassock and freezing his bum. That thought made me smile. It was the first time I'd smiled for quite some time. The bishop was here to deal with petitioners. It was his duty. Once a week, he travelled to a different church and listened to his flock. The sour look on his face told me that he didn't like it. He couldn't wait to ride back to Kersall Abbey and tuck into a big venison supper before crawling into his warm bed. I'd been there for almost an hour, and a dozen or so people had begged him for help. Each time, the bishop had given the same response: "We will pray for you." There was a big problem to be solved, a great danger. All of the petitions had related to it in some way, but prayer would not solve this. That was why I was here. Suddenly, the chapel door was thrust open. Swollen by the rain, it grated on the damp flags. 2 people entered. The first was a monk who pushed it shut after them to keep out the drafts. Then, skeletal in his flapping cassock, he strode up the aisle towards the bishop. Behind him was a very tall, young, red-cheeked farmer trying to keep up. They halted directly before the bishop, and the farmer opened his mouth to speak, but he was stopped by a gesture from the monk, who spoke for him. "This is John Ashton of Glover's Farm. He has young children, my lord, and the demon has claimed all three of them, demanding that they should be delivered to the Dark Tower by midnight. They are being escorted there, even as we speak. John Ashton begs for you to intercede." Now that made me nervous. If that was true, we hadn't much time. I watched the bishop close his eyes and steeple his hands as if in prayer. It was what he'd done when facing each previous petitioner. The farmer's children would be dragged to the Dark Tower by some of the locals who would be only too eager to do so. After all, it was in their own interests. If the command wasn't obeyed, the angry so-called demon would lay waste to the nearby villages and farms the following night. There'll be lots of deaths. Of course, it wasn't a demon. That was just priest talk. The creature was something else from the dark, but just as dangerous. Farmer Ashton was now kneeling before the bishop, head bowed, awaiting his reply. "We shall pray for you, my son," the bishop said at last. "The whole abbey will pray. If God is willing, our prayers will be answered." Despite all the wealth of the church and its armed servants, it was impossible for the bishop to do anything to help directly. I knew that unless something was done, it was only a matter of time before the abbey itself would have to be abandoned. Salford was becoming far too dangerous a place for monks. The creature was all-powerful and terrorized the area. When it took a fancy to something or someone, it was better to keep out of the way. It was a cannibal, and its appetite was growing, especially for young, tender flesh. The farmer remained up on his knees and began to sob, knowing that he had been denied the help he hoped for. The poor man thought that his children were as good as dead, but he didn't know about me. He didn't know that Alice Dean was sitting in the chapel not too far behind him. He didn't know that things were about to change and that Salford was soon to be a far different place. At least, that's what I was hoping for. At that moment, there was a disturbance, a sudden, loud rapping on the door of the chapel. The bishop nodded to the monk, who walked the length of the aisle, twisted the circular iron handle, and dragged the heavy door open once more. An old man stepped forward into the chapel. He was carrying a staff and a large leather bag, and wearing a long cloak with a hood, which was not unlike the habit of a monk. He put down the bag at his feet, and he pulled back the hood to reveal a gaunt face and a white beard and unkempt grey hair. My heart lurched with anguish. It was Tom Ward. And there we go. I could have gone into a bit of action, but we'll leave it at that.
Well, I think that's whet the appetite. Everyone's going to be desperate for this to come out now. So, folks, it'll fly by. Also, I must quickly say, because one of the things we'd hope is, if any of you haven't yet read the books or all of the books, if you pop to my website, beyond-books.co.uk, there's a tab with all of them there. You just pick the one you want, order away. Send me a message if you want Joe to put a special dedication in. You're quite happy to put quotes and messages in, when people order Joe. Yeah. In fact, one of the lads today wanted a special message. Can't remember if it was a birthday or whatever, but if there's a special event or whatever, just send a message to me. I pop around and see Joe, at least once a week, really, and then the books get sent off. So anyway, we've got quite a few more questions coming in. Sean was saying he actually worked with a guy called John Gregory, but as a computer programmer. But you started training to be a computer programmer at one point, didn't you? Was that?
Yeah, I was self-trained, but I was doing an open university degree. In fact, I did maths and electronics and then some programming, And I was trying to get out of teaching at the time because I was fed up with teaching. But in the end, I didn't. And then I moved to the sixth form college, which I thought was a lot better. I enjoyed that. So I'm glad I didn't leave now.
Also, Sean was saying he thinks Peg Powler, Powler, You'll have to have a check on it. It could just be another name for Jenny Greenteeth.
It could well be.
The
I'll
way
check it out
names
anyway. Yeah.
get changed in different
Right. It's
areas.
something I've never heard of actually. I've not heard about this. It's new to me, so we'll check.
Well, Peg's quite a common witch type name, isn't
Peg,
it?
yeah, the
Short, is that
Peg's,
short for
yeah.
Margaret? Is that another shortened version of Margaret? Peg.
I would, yeah. This would be a lad used to know, and he used to call his girlfriend. I would Peg. He was joking with her really, but yeah, I think it's Margaret. I'm not sure. It's a
So a chap called Matt Shin says he loves your books, which is good to know, and he wonders, is there a link from Chippenden to Greece, and did, is Mam ever going to come back?
Do you mean? I mean, I don't know how many of the books that you've read. At the moment, I'm not. I mean, the only link between Chippenden and Greece is the fact that Mam was born in Greece. Mam is a very old. Obviously, she's not human, and she's from Greece, Lamia. But basically, I have no plans to bring Mam back at the moment. But every so often, I think I write the odd little story. I've got a few little short stories gathering. I mean, whether I ever will do another collection of short stories or not, I don't know. And one fragment, Mam features in it. It's not really that well written so far, and it's not completed by any means, but I have a short story. I'd like to consider Mam and her earlier life and what she got up to before she actually became the nice mother who had 7 sons, because she wasn't a nice mother before that.
It's quite a task having 7 sons, isn't it? I mean, that alone is, a thing. Now, touching on that, Emily over in America was saying, if there was, let's say there was a girl from Pendle born as a witch,
Yeah.
she is the 7th daughter of a 7th daughter. How could she? How or what would happen? Would she be a spook? Would she be a witch? Have you ever put that thought?
No, not. It's an interesting idea there, really. I mean, it would depend upon who she was involved with, who would influence her. I mean, obviously, she could go either way. But it would depend upon the circumstances, really. I mean, I don't think you're doomed by your background. There's a potential to go in either direction. In that case, I would think, really.
It's something to think about, though. That's a good one to store, isn't it?
I don't know.
Nick,
Go on. Sorry,
a chap called Nick was quite a long one. This, so let me read it, and we'll work it out. Hi, Joe. We spent a great deal of books reading about Mars predictions in the Chronicles about how Tom would be the hunter of the dark. Do you think this has eventually been fleshed out enough to be put in to the Starblade Chronicles, or is there going to be more of Tom in the future?
Well, I don't know if you've read the latest books, I don't, the Wulf books. I don't know. I mean, I must confess, I think there's some truth in that. That Tom is a hunter of the dark, and he is a very special spook. Perhaps the equal John Gregory, maybe it turns out to be. It didn't quite live up to the promise. Maybe apart from being sorting out the fiend in Spook 13, the Spook's Revenge. Maybe I didn't develop that quite enough, really. I mean, that's true. I mean, again, I don't want to give too much away, but there's more chance that Wulf will be the hunter of the dark that Tom never quite became. That's the way it's going at the moment, I must confess, with the 3rd book. Wulf is definitely a hunter of the dark by book 3.
Yeah. Oh, and Roger, the teacher from Garstang Primary, has just signed in and says hello. So, Roger, hello. A big thank you from myself as the bookseller, but I'm sure Joe would echo my thanks for you, your school, and the children, and you're taking on board everything to do with the Spooks books. I mean, big fans in the making at that school, Joe.
Yes.
Garstang Primary. I think that's up there on the list of schools that are keen at the moment, isn't it? So, Roger, if there's a question you want to ask, do feel free. Emily wants to ask about writing, really. I think, obviously, she's someone that wants to write. I know it's very hard to give advice, but have you got a couple of things that you really could share with Emily or anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, writing, I mean, I've always said this, it's true. The hardest thing of all about writing is that life gets in the way, and you've got to make time to write, and people do that in different ways. I mean, I know people, for example, that if you're married or you've got a partner, I mean, it may well be that your writing has got to come out of the time you'd share with your partner. This is the horror of it, really. Or it comes out of the time that you would normally work at your livelihood. So you've got to make time to write if you want to write. And as I've said before, I made time to write by getting up very early in the morning. I mean, I would get up early and write. I was a teacher. I would write in the study, which was one of the kids' bedrooms as they left home. And so I made time to write. And if you don't, that's the first thing. You have to write. You have to practice to become a writer. You have to write. And the other thing, of course, is reading. And I've always read a lot. I'm always reading at least one book at a time. And that's it. I think you're learning to actually, you know, to write when you're reading, because you're absorbing stuff painlessly. And then I think the most important thing is you're nothing as a writer without ideas. A lot of people maybe can write well, can write good prose, but if you've not got an idea, what's the point? But I think we've all got ideas. It's recognizing the idea. We're recognizing something which may not seem initially to be really original in itself, but has the potential to go down a different path. So you need a notebook, and that's what I did at a very early age. And it doesn't have to be a posh leather-bound book. It can be an old, in my case, they're old school exercise books or scrappy pieces of paper. But the important thing was not to throw them away, to date each idea and to actually treat it like brainstorming, so that you're writing down things which seem stupid, but you don't care. You don't censor your ideas. You write everything down. And then 10 years later, you come back and look at them and you think, yes, 90% of that is rubbish. There might be something there. I mean, I've said this many times before, but I sat on the idea for the Spook's Apprentice for about 18 years. You know, I moved house. The village had a boggart. I wrote in my notebook, a man who deals with boggarts, and I did nothing about it for 18 years. This is in 1983. And then I'm only starting to write, you know, the Spook's Apprentice 18 years later, when I went back through my notebooks and found the idea for the Spook's Apprentice. So that's what gave me, you know, maybe a writer. It's the notebook in the end. And don't forget, though, for at least 9 of those years, despite lots of rejections, practicing the trade of writing. I might have been getting turned down, but I must be getting better. I hoped I was getting better, because I'm learning how to write. I'm learning how to deal with a block if you can't go on with the text. I'm learning how to develop characters. I'm practicing my craft, really. And I'm doing it in the morning before I go to work while I'm still fresh with a cup of coffee. But I think above all, I think the notebook. We don't get that many good ideas. I've not had that many. I've written a few books other than the Spook series, but you can say less than 5 ideas that are really worth developing, you know, seriously, in a lifetime. So when you get that idea, you've got to go for it. You've got to actually make it yours. And you've got most of all, you've got to record it, because if you don't record it, you'll forget it. You forget it before morning comes sometimes.
And a question about what you read. I mean, I know you read a lot because we chat about what we both read. But do you ever get time to read what fans send you, like, you know, like stories or fan fiction, anything like that? And I know
I
children,
do.
now and again, children do a competition and you judge it in a
Yeah.
school. But you know, do you read much of that sort of stuff when it comes in?
I don't hunt down fan fiction generally, you know, but if people have sent me stuff, I've probably looked at it, really. The truth is, I don't really read a lot of children's fiction. I mean, for example, if I would never join the children's quiz. What's that quiz that the guy from New Zealand does? You know,
Oh, the Kids
Anita.
Lit quiz. Yeah,
Yeah, I would
yeah.
never be part of that because I'm rubbish, you know, because I don't read it. I don't know enough about
Look,
it.
you,
I
you
tend to read adult stuff,
you
you know.
take part to give the kids somebody to be able to say, and we beat the team with the famous author on.
Because
I've
the
done them with Kathy Cassidy and Andy
I
Briggs and a few other authors, and we never win. There's always
no, the kids are
at least
better. They're reading
yeah,
the stuff though, of course, and we're not
they're
reading
reading.
it, are we? Most of it anyway. No, I
Yeah,
was rubbish. I mean, I got one. I think Anita once asked me to be on the team. I thought, no way, I'll be
yeah.
embarrassed. So I never did. No.
Yeah. Now, someone called John and John Waddington in America wonders when you decided that Alice was going to have a baby. Was she on her own, or did she have someone, you know, there to a midwife, or did Grimalkin help, or you know, did you ever think that sort of technical detail through,
No,
or
I didn't really. But I think that Alice is a very capable young woman as well as a powerful witch. I don't think Bertha gave me much trouble, to be quite honest. I never really thought about that though, really. And of course, if you've read the books, you know that she's got she's got a partner. She's got Tom. So
Yeah, and Emily, who was just asking about writing, actually wants to know this. What do you do when you're not writing?
when
Have
I'm
you?
not writing, I walk, I dream, I drink coffee, I listen to music. I do the things that ordinary people do. Just
Well, and
writing's
what
just like part of your life. It's
and
just that.
watch or not watch England play football, according to what you
Yeah,
were saying.
I'll be watching the England games. I'll be watching, on Wednesday as well. So I like football. I used to support Preston North End. I mean, I still do. I still watch Preston North End sometimes, but I've not been on for a few years. But I used to actually. I was a season ticket holder around the year 2000 for about 7 or 8 years. So that was my Saturday. I used to watch football. I supported my local team, which was Preston. So yeah, I mean, writing probably takes more time than most hobbies, because if you're a writer, you're always dreaming. I've always been told off from a young age. Even my mother said, he's always got his head in the clouds. I'm a daydreamer, and I'm not necessarily concentrating on people who. This is the annoying thing. I annoy people. I know. I annoy people close to me, because sometimes they talk to me and they know that I'm not actually all there. It's true. I am listening, and I will reply, but on another level, I might be thinking of something else, which is a terrible thing to admit. I can't help it. It's compulsive. I'm always dreaming. I'm never quite plugged in. I'm not. This advice: live the moment, plug into the moment. No way. I don't want to be in the moment at all. I'm dreaming. I'm in another world completely. Leave me alone. I like it. This is what I do.
That's brilliant. I mean, now I think there's a difference between America and England for books being out and how many and all that. And
Yeah.
you might not know the answer to every question, but e-books, Joe, Kindle or otherwise, are they out in America or
I think
coming
so.
out?
Yeah. I mean, what one book? I think. Which one was it? I'm not sure if it was Aberrations, or it might have been Aberrations. Oh, Arena 13. I think it only came out in ebook in America. I mean, I think my editor, Steve Geck, who I used to, it was HarperCollins originally. I think he was with a different company, and HarperCollins didn't take Arena 13, but I think he took it as an ebook. So I know that Arena 13 was out as an ebook. But there's this problem again, isn't it, about buying through Amazon? But yeah, the books are in America available as ebooks. But after the New Darkness, Dark Assassin, America did not take any more, you see. So I don't know if you can probably buy them in Europe or the UK, but they're not necessarily available, as ebooks through Amazon in America. There's been a problem about that, really.
That people are just going to have to buy a UK Kindle and then download the
Yeah,
UK ones because they're all out over here, aren't they?
there are territories, and publishers fight over territories. So it's a terrible thing to send a UK ebook to America for somebody to buy. They don't like that, or the reverse. You see, it's their territory. So there
Yeah.
are problems with that.
Now, to Christiana in Romania, this is brilliant. She says you were at her school in 2008, and you have made her love reading
Oh, right.
before
Okay.
before you turned up and started talking to her and the rest of the school about your books. She wasn't keen, but now because she's read the Spooks, she's a big fan of reading.
Oh,
Isn't
that's good.
that a lovely thing when you
Yeah.
hear from someone who's you know become a reader because of what you've done, as the writer. Yeah. So Rebecca says, "Poor Tom." I think that's in relation to into your reading there. So you like horror and sci-fi, Joe? Is there
Yeah.
anything that actually scares you?
Not at all. No, I don't. Well, this scares me. Things in life scare me. Yeah, certainly. But in fiction, no. I mean, I don't get scared very easily when I'm reading. And I always say the same, because people say to me, "Oh, you're not scared when you're writing that weird stuff or that scary." And not at all, because I always make the analogy that it's like flying a plane. I'm scared of flying. I fly a lot, but I'm scared of turbulence. But the pilot's not. The pilot's done it before, and I am the pilot, so I don't have to worry really. But I'm trying to
Yeah.
give the readers a scary flight. That's
Am,
what my intention is.
I'm half right probably, and you can correct me and explain. When you wrote one of the books, did you not write something that your editor didn't think was suitable for the audience, and you had a bit of a standoff whether or not what you'd written was going to stay in the book, or you were going to have to tone it down a bit? I don't know if
I
it was
don't know.
one of the recent books or one of the earlier
No,
books, because
I
you've
can't
had
remember.
more than one editor, haven't you?
I have, yeah. I mean, there've been all sorts of little things. Sometimes an editor can do what they call a desk edit, a little, and they just whip through a book, and for pace, they might cut certain things out, which to them may not be important. I mean, one thing I can remember, my first editor, Charlie Shepherd, I mean, she was a really good editor, but I remember I described a scene in which there was a canal opposite the house. There was a cobbled street and a canal, and it was based upon a place where I used to live, you know. And I wanted to mention the canal in it. So I got the book out to read it to an audience. And when I started to read it, the canal's vanished. She's got the canal. And obviously, she'd done it without what she probably thought it was insignificant. You know, it wasn't important. And it wasn't that important at the time. But the canal, the Lancaster Kendal Canal, becomes an important piece of the county geography. So it features in future books. So really, I would have liked to have kept the canal, really. But that's what happens. You've got to accept. And I remember saying to her, "Why did you cut it? Why did you cut it?" And she laughed and she said she couldn't even remember cutting it. But I know why she'd have cut it. She'd have thought, we don't need that. It's just, let's move the story on. Let's get a bit of pace. There's lots of different things, reasons why editors change things. I mean, I can't remember anything. I can't remember ever being really badly censored. I can remember one thing. If you want me to tell this horrible story, it's only short. Um, they're in a tree trunk, and I think Tom's got some cut or some scrape on his arm. And Alice, the evil Alice, what Alice does, she licks it clean. Where she was like, it's had blood on it. She licks it clean, and it's her way of actually, before she puts the herbs or whatever to. I made it. Oh, we can't have you licking the blood. That was cut. I didn't mean anything. Why not? Why not? But they won't let me have that. So we don't get Alice licking Tom's arm clean of dried blood. So
But she
that was
would
cut
do, wouldn't she? She would
what?
do, wouldn't she?
Oh, she
She?
would.
Though?
Alice would do that, definitely. It was, she'd clean it up with a tongue like a cat, definitely, without a doubt.
Yeah. And Sean was saying he obviously, and I did too. He really enjoyed the collection of short stories you did,
Oh, yes.
Witches. Would you would you look at doing another sort of short story collection of minor characters and things that
Yeah,
might not be a whole book on their own, but would work well as just
yeah,
short stories?
yeah, it's true. I'm bit by bit, I'm building up a collection of short stories now, and they're not all spooks. I mean, for example, I've got one now, which is called It Began in Preston, and that is linked to the to the aberrations. It's how aberrations started, and that's ready for publication if anybody wants it. And it's part of that could be part of a short story collection. I've got a fragment of Mum, Mum's early life. I've got lots of little things. I've got stuff which is science fiction, I would argue, rather than spook. But yeah, I have probably got about 7 or 8 short stories. But yeah, I mean, I'd be interested in doing another short story. But that was in the days when I used to write 2 books a year. So once we got into that pattern, we thought, what's your second book going to be? Oh, I'd like to do Witches. So that's how Witches came about.
And a lady called Maria was saying she genuinely thinks your books are the best that she's read, and she's now going to reread them. So
Oh,
that's
good.
pretty
Yeah,
cool. Well, you're going to have to write quicker, aren't you? Then she'll
I
have
am. Yeah, yeah.
something new to read. And Rose, another fan, was saying she thinks the better the second time round, which is
Right.
which is pretty cool, actually, isn't it?
Well, I like
So
I like that. That's praise indeed, because I thought my test of a good book
yeah.
is always,
Oh,
can you
there's
read it
people.
again?
Yeah,
Can you read it a second time?
there's people saying when can they pre-order Wolf 3? Well, it'll be about this. No, it'll be May onwards, won't it, Joe? Next year.
As I said, I'll probably find out this week or early next whether it'll be published or not.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, we're hoping to do another one of these at the end of August or thereabouts, aren't we? And
so we'll let you know then. Yeah,
you'll fill people in, won't you?
I will.
And you've got people who are now wanting to visit. Actually, we talked about this years ago about a Spooks trail. Where
We thought about that, didn't we? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
because I remember you wanted to go up to Clitheroe to do some research, and we
Well, we
stopped at a
did.
few places on the way, didn't we?
That was going to go into a book at some point. Yeah,
Yeah.
Clitheroe Castle. Remember? Yeah.
Yeah. So someone called Adrian is now trying to drag his wife to visit Preston and other locations in the series. And he's just getting us to start reading Spook's Apprentice to get into the series. Wasn't there something on your Instagram and Facebook about some of the locations? Wasn't there a girl who'd gone
Yeah,
walking
somebody
and
wanted to know where to go. Yeah, somewhat. Oh yeah, like I got to go up on is it Hampstead Fell? It's near Grange over Sands, and there's a big board with places listed on the board, on a metal board, and one of them was the Wardstone. Is the Wardstone real? Yes, it is real. It's a real place, east of Lancaster up on the fells. Yeah, but
and
very
also,
boggy.
I mean, we've got you used to use in your PowerPoints in schools the old map of Lancashire, which is
Yes.
lovely. I think your publishers have put that on like a slide now because some of the schools we send things to them. We'll put that. Linda can put that up on the Facebook page at some point
Okay.
so people can see because you've changed some of the place names. I mean, in case anyone doesn't know, there's a real place called Lancaster, but you just use Castor, don't you?
Yeah, and
And
in a way, I almost regret it now because when I came to write, the actual aberrations books, I kept to the real names. I called Preston, I called it Lancaster, but I don't know why I did it. So I started to write the series, the first book, and I changed some of the names. I mean, Longridge, for example, became the Long Ridge. Preston became Priesttown, and Chippenden, instead of calling it Chipping, which were to write the series again, I probably would just call it Chipping, but I don't know. That's what happened. You
yeah,
do it and then it's too late to change.
yeah. There's a few people saying that your website's got a link to places that inspired the series.
Yeah, the
Um,
Stone Grave's a good place. The Stone Grave's station is a just just out of sight of the nuclear power station. Don't go around the corner.
yeah, well, you're safe up there, aren't you?
You are, yeah.
So Matt asks, he's got a question about the dark. Is there a possibility that good characters like a spook or man would have passed into the dark? And if the fiend is the ruler of the dark, is it possible that he could come back? Or is that never likely
Well,
to happen?
I'll deal with the final question first of all, because I don't want, again, I don't want to give too much away about Wulf. But I've always said all along in the Spooks books, it's not a new idea. This is something that other writers have used before. But how is a god or a demon created? Through faith. If enough people believe in the fiend, there is a fiend who can function. And therefore, if the fiend is destroyed, as we won't spoil it for people who don't know, in theory, if enough people still believe, it could come back. So yes, there is a chance the fiend could one day return. That's true.
So that's something for you to be thinking about before the readers find out, isn't it? Matt was saying is he wondered if there was a link between a tunnel between Circe's lair and the county. Is that something that you actively can remember, or
Well, yeah, what he says, I think it's I mean, this goes on through the Wulf books. The idea of an underworld, it's an Irish idea, really, I suppose, to a certain extent. This idea of an underworld is like the Hollow Hills. It's like somewhere, it's a space where the supernatural is more powerful. And it's a link, it's between our world and the world of the dead, if you will, really. So an underworld, so I've taken that idea. So my underworlds are like a space, a sealed space to a certain extent between the world of the county and the world of the dark. So they exist as a link between the two. They are like a psychic tunnel, if you will, really, between the two worlds. And I use that. I use that in Wulf,
you've got
particularly in the third one. Yeah.
another lady called Tanya, another New Zealand fan, which is
Right.
lovely that you. I mean, do you know how many countries your books are published in? Do you ever get told?
Well, I know that there were at one point they were in translation in 30 countries. I've lost track. I once got a list. So they tracked 30 different languages at some point.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I suppose America, Canada, New Zealand, England,
they're
Australia,
all different. They're
they're
English-speaking
all
countries. Yeah. So I
they're in
don't know
all.
how many, but it's got to be between 40 and 50, I would have thought, in terms of naming countries where they've been published. Yeah. But of course, the truth is, it's not published in as many countries as it was at its peak. It would have had 30 translations, but not everybody continued it. For example, the books have done really well in France and continue to be successful there. Not as successful in Germany. Why, I don't know. Maybe not as good a translator, because I've had a really good French translator. So if you don't get a good translator, maybe that makes a difference. But they've not
Yeah,
always been successful. And then sometimes world economies made a difference. They were doing really well in Brazil, weren't they? I mean, Brazil was great. But since, they've had lots of problems, especially since the Olympic Games, I think really they've financially they've gone into deep problems, and that they've not been, producing the later books. Though when things do pick up after COVID, maybe they will carry on, because I went on tour to Brazil and they were doing very well at that time. But we'll see.
Yeah, I think Tanya and Rebecca both want pet boggarts. I think they're quite keen to have pet boggarts that that look after them, and because your boggart does
Yeah.
some cooking, doesn't
Oh
he?
yeah,
From
it's
what
a
I
good cook.
remember.
It's very good at bacon and eggs. Yeah, this is what it does in the morning. But don't go down too early; you'll get your ears boxed.
Yeah, and a lady called Andrea, another Romanian fan, was saying, would you consider publishing the short stories as ebooks if your publisher didn't want to publish them? Would you do them independently?
There's always a chance of that. Yeah, I've never done that in my life yet, but I've often thought about Amazon and maybe putting a collection of something on there, or maybe accessible through the website. Maybe a token price or even free, basically. I mean, I have thought recently, we've got a website, and maybe sometimes I should put one of my short stories on the website for a week or two, see if anybody's interested. Or that's a thing for the future. Yeah, it's a possibility. Never done that, but yeah, we could put stuff out that my publisher doesn't want.
Yeah,
I don't know what the technicalities are. I think they have to reject it first. I think that on my contract it would normally say I've got to submit each children's book to them, and they've got to get first refusal. But if I were to send them a collection of short stories and they turned it down, I'm sure they wouldn't mind if I were to put it on Amazon, for example.
yeah. I suppose that's the thing with having like a contract, isn't it? Really,
it is. Yeah,
it's a good thing and a bad thing at the same time, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we've got a fan in Denmark. Are you?
Right.
Have you ever been to Denmark, or is that somewhere?
No,
that
I've not. I think it's one of the countries I almost went to.
Yeah,
I
but
almost
is
went
it
to Denmark. I
somewhere
almost went to. Yeah, I
where you
almost went
might
to
go?
Norway. I would like to go. Yeah, it's like things that, I mean, for example, I can give you Norway, for example. I got an invitation. I wanted to go, but I was already tied up with something in England. I couldn't go. So that's what happens
I
sometimes.
mean,
It's
at the moment,
clashes.
travel itself is a bit of a problem. I mean, I know we're looking at, from mid-July or late July, things are going to ease a bit in England, but some countries have still got quite strict, um, restrictions in place, haven't they? Really,
I know it's
which
a
is why
nightmare.
you've kindly agreed to do these occasional, evening things for us, but other times might become available to allow fans in other countries to see you, have a chat, and
Yeah,
whatever. Zoom's done us a big favor in a way, hasn't it?
it has. You can't reach all place of the world, but I do like going physically. It's good to go to another country and to see the place and
Yeah. Now,
meet people there.
Tristan was late signing on because I had to send him a link to
Okay.
his Facebook was playing up. So Tristan, you'll have missed Joe's reading earlier on. I will share a link to Joe's page from YouTube later, so you can watch Joe's reading. Because Joe very kindly has read the first few pages of Wulf Book 3, which is May next year onwards. It's somewhere
Well,
after May next year, isn't it?
it would have been normally about May, the middle of May, but I think because of where things have gone, it's got to be later. So
Yeah.
it would be more likely to be October if it goes ahead.
And we've got someone called Matthew Thompson in America,
Right,
and he wants to know about Jenny. And
right.
will you ever go back to Jenny and flesh her out a bit more? And
Well, I don't like to give too much stuff away, but I've just read 2 pages, which, again, I said to you, may not even be in the final book of Wulf. Jenny is back in Wulf 3. That's all I can say. I won't say
oh,
how big. Yeah, so that's news.
and for those
I'm not
that
going to say anything other than that. Yeah.
if you've not read about Jenny, Jenny was in the immediate continuation of the Wardstone
A new
Chronicles,
darkness. Yeah,
New Darkness, which was
obviously.
called the Starblade Chronicles. Because the
That's
problem
correct.
is the books have more than one title of their own, and then in other countries they actually change them again, don't they? Were they
They
called the
do. Yeah.
Starblade Chronicles in America?
I can't remember. I think they probably did. They didn't change it to the Last Apprentice or
Yeah,
anything. No.
but
I
New
think they used the
Darkness.
title.
New
Yeah.
Darkness should be easy enough to check, guys. And there's 3 of those: New Darkness, Dark Army, and Dark Assassin. And
And Jenny,
that's
of course, is the 7th daughter of a 7th daughter.
yeah,
So she is the first ever female Spook's Apprentice.
yeah. And Dark Assassin's my favourite book cover, by the way. Just if I was having a vote, that would win. Um, Now, Hunter Colby, what a great name in America. Would you ever take an apprentice as a spook to learn about writing in real life to, you know,
Would I?
so as in, assuming in the future you're no longer with us, which probably will happen, although medical
Yeah.
science is wonderful these days. Would you like someone to write alongside you at some point to carry on? Stephen King's some writes, but I think as a separate entity. Um, there was somebody whose son or wife carried on after they passed away, wasn't there? Have you ever
The, the,
thought that far into the future, Joe? Dare we
no,
ask?
the June books as well. Frank Herbert's
Oh yeah, his
son,
son did, didn't he? Yeah,
they carried on. It's quite a tradition. No, I don't know. I mean, I've got my son. Paul wants to be a writer. He's writing all the time. My other son Stephen, he's written. He did the Spook's Apprentice.
the
The
play.
play version. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, they both would like to write. I think really, but I don't know. I mean, it's difficult. I'm not sure.
Now, Christiana over in Romania says, "Did you base John Gregory on you looking in the mirror?"
Possibly yes. I mean,
Yeah,
I once was like Tom. I was 13, maybe or 12, and then I grew up to be John Gregory. I
yeah.
suppose John Gregory's now about my age, really. And
When
he's very fit. We're not the way he dashes around the county with his staff like a 26-year-old, really.
Yeah. Well, no, I must admit, when I first started going out to schools and things with you, I often thought you've got to have based the spook on yourself. You've got to be
Yeah.
writing as that's you hidden inside the book. I always thought that.
Well, you are you yourself to a certain extent, just changing little things. You're looking through the eyes of the character, but there's got to be a lot of that
Well, he's a
character that's
teacher.
come from you.
He's a teacher, isn't he? And
Yes, yeah, he's
you
guiding
were the
people.
teacher. Were you a strict teacher? If we asked
No, not at all.
that head teacher,
My favourite part of teaching was in the sixth form college, where to me I just treat them like equals. Really, I mean, I know they're only 18. I know some other teachers would say they treat them like kids. I'm sorry that they did, and I didn't. I've always thought you treat people as they are, and to me they're adults. I always thought that the people I taught were as good as adults. So
right, guys? We've got just a couple of minutes left. I'm just scrolling through the chat because it refreshes every so often. So if anyone's got a last question, just pop it in the chat box, and Joe and his publicist will always do the best to answer questions that pop up on the Facebook page anyway. Um, so we're not sure if Wolf's going to come out in America, are we?
well,
That's
they're not taking it yet. No, I mean, I know that they've tried to sell it to America. Let's be honest. I mean, there's a good rights team at Penguin, and they're actively trying to sell. But it's just the original publisher didn't want to carry on with the spooks. They did a lot. Let's be honest. They didn't 16 books, 17, 18 books counting. They published 18 books. You can't complain about that, can you? But
yeah.
obviously things move on. So.
So Tristan, who missed the start of the talk, was asking, have you ever thought about Tom becoming very old?
Oh, well, if you've just read the new extract, well, I've just read the new extract. If you listen to that, you'll see something's happened. Tom is no longer young. White beard, grey hair, blind face. What's happened? This is the first 2 pages of the new book.
Someone's saying it now that the weather's nice in England. Are you getting up like at 4 o'clock in the morning to write, or
No, just the
no?
same. I'm a full-time writer. I don't need to get up before work because
Yeah,
work is writing anyway, you see. So
yeah,
and I tend to get up between 7 and 8 in the morning, and I'll have a cup of coffee. And sometimes, if I'm under pressure because I've got a deadline, I will do most of my work. I'll do early in the morning, But I can write at any time, so I could do anything. It might be
well,
afternoon when I'm writing.
I mean, you write when you're on holiday and things. You either
I
take a
do, yeah.
notebook or your laptop or whatever with you, don't you?
Even on tour, yeah. I'd get in the hotel room. I'd sit in the window, and I'd start. And I'd always try to do a couple hundred words a day, even when I'm on tour. Because if you're writing a book and you don't keep with it, you don't keep writing, you can lose track. So in my holidays, I'd go off on tour for 2 weeks, come back, and it had died. The book had died in my head. It had withered away. So you need to keep at it. So I'd always be writing, even if it's only reading and writing 100 words, it's better than nothing. You keep it ticking over, keep it moving forward.
And also, one thing about writing is you've got to go over and edit things, and you've got to listen to your editor, I suppose. They're part
Yeah.
of the deal, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, are you much quicker at all of that now? Is that something that you've got
I think,
good grasp?
yeah, I do. I do think I'm better. I've got a lot of experience working with editors now. So there's a certain approach to editing I like. Without going into details, one of the things that sometimes my editors will do, you've got your Word document, and they will put a note in the margin, and so you have to deal with it. You come down and you see this point to be made. It might be change this, or this doesn't work, or whatever. So I go through and I have to deal with that. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes I just put a question mark and think, I'm not doing that, and I scroll on. But then I come back and think about it again, So you're always having to, it's a dialogue, it's sort of sometimes a compromise, and sometimes things that an editor's advised, I might initially have said, not sure about that. But sometimes I've come back and done it in the end.
And the sad thing is, you don't get to go down to London and have meetings at the Mo. It's all by email and Zoom, isn't it?
It is, I'm afraid, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Now, Rebecca over in America was saying, and I guess she was going to ask this question. Have you ever thought about going backwards with Grimalkin and telling us a bit more about her before she comes into Tom's world?
Yeah, well, that could, it's another possibility. I mean, I think with quite a few of the characters, that there's room to find out what went on before, especially Mam. She's the one that's got a lot of things to answer and to be described, a lot of adventures. But yeah, it's a possibility. But I mean, it's at the moment I'm working on Wulf, and I mean, I've done the third one, and I think there's a fourth. That's where I'm thinking at the moment. I mean, I could end it with 3, but I have an idea already. It starts to come into your head whether you want it to or not, really. So there is a fourth one building already.
Right, guys, I think it's amazing how quickly time flies by. I'm just quickly someone from David was saying that you about churches, and
Yeah.
I'm assuming he might mean the Quisitor and things like that. How did you decide to spin that dialogue and have the church is almost a baddie to the spook, isn't it really?
It can be, yeah. And if it's not quite true, because if you look at the books, you'll find there are some friendly priests. I mean, there's in Spook's Battle, for example, there is a priest who once was a spook. He had been trained as an apprentice, but he in the end decided he'd rather be a priest. So yeah, but on the whole, it's not the whole of the church. It's this witch finder quizzitor bit that's the danger. It's as if a spook treads upon the toes of the church's work, and because the spook is very effective and it's a practical trade, it's a craft, and gets the job done. The priests who deal with the dark rely upon prayer, and of course they don't like it, so they tend to actually hunt down the Quisters. Certainly hunt down the spooks. They're on the list just as likely as to be on the list as a priest, as a witch.
Yeah. One very last quick thing about. I mean, do you wish there were more illustrations in the books?
Yeah, I do actually. I mean, I think it's nice. That's why I particularly like the Spook's bestiary, and I think there's one of in France, for example, the Spook's Apprentice is actually being turned into a graphic novel. I think at the moment. I don't know how far that's got, but we have signed the contract, so I think it's going ahead. So I mean, this is something that's interesting. Yeah.
Well, the graphic novels are very popular at the moment, aren't they? I know every
Yeah.
school library I go to, first
Yeah.
thing the librarian always asks me is, are they making a graphic novel of books like yours and other series as that they're fans of? Because the children are devouring. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's the Marvel and DC Comics thing, but a lot of it they do. It's manga, isn't it? It's slightly
Yeah. Yeah.
different than Marvel. Anyway,
Well, they're
Joe.
big in France. Yeah,
Um,
graphic novels are really big in France. So we'll see what the Spook is like. I'm looking forward to seeing it actually.
Yeah, and the very last question. As the stories progress and things become more desperate, the spooks resort to killing enemies.
Killing,
Killing their enemies.
right?
Would you have wanted to stick with binding and imprisoning, or, did it become just a necessary part of
I
the
think
story?
it would become necessary, and in a way, you could argue that to take a witch, no matter what she's done, and put it into a pit and leave it there indefinitely is almost cruel, more cruel than actually a quick death. I don't know, but
Yeah,
I think a lot of the killings are done out of immediate necessity. That's what it is really.
yeah. Anyway, it's an hour has flashed by. If there's any questions we've missed, Joe and Linda and myself and anyone else who can will make sure that they're flagged up and answered for you. Joe will post up information about when we're doing another one of these in a month or 6 weeks. You know, we need a little bit of some news coming out, Joe, don't we really?
Can he still see me?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, okay, I
Yeah,
lost my picture, but never mind.
yeah.
It's okay.
So you know, we'll do another one in about
On there.
4, 5, 6 weeks. We might try and find a slightly different time, just to ease the getting up early for those abroad. You know, maybe we can have a chat about that, Joe, can't we?
We
Anyway,
can.
a big thank you from me and from everyone who's asked questions. It's time has flown by. It's lovely to have real fans engage with a favourite author. Keep spreading the word to everybody you know to read these brilliant books. If you're missing any or want any for presents, dive onto my website, Beyond Books, and just order away. Send me a message with names, messages that you want in them. At the moment, we've got some nice maps that the publishers sent us that are going out with the orders, Joe, and we've
Yeah,
got
yeah.
bookmarks and posters when we can send them. So get in touch through my website, Beyond Books, and hopefully we'll see you in about 4, 5, 6 weeks, Joe. Yeah,
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Then.
Right. Thank you from me,
Thank you very
and
much. Bye.
thank you for giving your time up tonight. I will see you with the next lot of orders in a day or so.
Okay, Tony. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Bye. Then.
Joe. Bye for now. Bye.